Whether you believe it or not, you actually follow the energetic rules. You go to a party, you meet somebody, they might not even say anything, and you already have a feeling you either like a person or not like the person. Why? Because of their energy, not because of their looks or anything like that.
That was Marina Kostina of Ravenous Life Healing Center here in Chicago, and we are talking all about the energy of choice today. Hello, I'm your host, Martin John, the Recovery Mentor, and you're listening to the Recover Yourself podcast. This podcast is different from other recovery podcasts because we're tackling a broader conversation around recovery and addiction. I'm having conversations about how you can open up your awareness to grow and expand your life regardless of the messages you're receiving from others. I would love to see each and every one of us recover ourselves however suits us best, rather than trying to reach some arbitrary markers set by other people using random strategies that worked for other people. You see, every choice we make has some energetic value, even those choices we are not aware we're making. Regular listeners will know my coffee analogy about choices we don't make, which asks, did you choose to drink coffee today, or did you just execute a choice that you made a long time ago? I think the energy we would like to have in our lives is about who we are becoming and who we want to be. Yet so many of our choices are made from the past, and the energy associated with those choices is keeping us there. Growing and shifting all starts from a state of awareness. Dr. Kostina and I talk a lot about curiosity and how we can approach our growth with a bit more kindness than maybe we have allowed ourselves to in the past. Marina, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me here.
We're going to be chatting about the energy of choice. Now, you do energy work, and you've worked with people in recovery and other things like that within a certain modality of energy work. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? Just like introduce us to it?
Sure. I use a lot of different energy modalities, such as Reiki, that is probably known here. I use some modalities that I learned in Siberia, in Mexico, that works with people's energy and just aligns the human energetic body, because we have several bodies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so and through that process, we open people's chakras. We are kind of balancing the masculine and feminine energies. There's so much. It's the whole science that is unfortunately not yet known as much and popularized, but hopefully very soon that this is going to be a part of any medical field.
Yeah. And so when we make our own choices, like when we make choices in our lives, we're inadvertently, maybe we want to say, affecting our energy. How do choices that we make, like, what are some of the ways that our choices day to day can really affect our energy?
Well, like you say, everything is energy, absolutely everything. And whether you believe it or not, you actually follow the energetic rules. You go to a party, you meet somebody, they might not even say anything, and you already have a feeling you either like a person or not like the person. Why? Because of their energy, not because of their looks or anything like that. And so every day, every decision, you decide to hang out with people who are negative, right? And you constantly in that discussing negative stuff and how everything is bad in your life. Your energy is going to sink, right? So we are like radio stations, right? So we're attuned to different frequencies. And so if you play, I don't know, rock station, you cannot at the same time play classical music, correct? So, but we're funny people because we always blame the radio, right? We always talk about, oh, please, radio change, or like, come on, change. Well, we're the ones who have the control. So you tune in where you want to be. And I know I've gone through my life, through even friendships, that, the only thing that connected us is misery. Mm-hmm. And that's what we did all day long. And guess how my life was?
Right.
Broke, alone, sad, Mm-hmm. And it was interesting. And actually, once I started eating right, I started eating alkaline food, and I stopped drinking, I lost a lot of so-called friends because there was absolutely no common ground anymore.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's always, like there's I always like to tell people, that are starting to, enter their journey into sober curiosity and start to look at not drinking, and they're like, everybody else is telling me like that I need to drink, and I always think, no, they're not doing that. Like, you're seeing that. I understand that you're seeing that. Like, your energy is pointing you in a direction to see that that's happening. But really, it's just an energetic sort of thing. Like, the kind of relationship that you used to have was one of transaction. Like, you and them had this energetic transaction, which was as such that you made it okay for them to drink, they made it okay for you to drink. And now that you're making a choice that is against that transactional, like, you have broken a transactional contract. Can you talk a little bit about like like energetic transactional contracts?
This is a very interesting concept that you brought. First of all, I love the term curiosity, sober curiosity. And that's what actually, it's a very positive, it's a very scary state, right? Because you are exploring completely unfamiliar territory within so-called familiar environment, right? Because, you get used to living like that. Everybody does, right? We turn on the TV and there is a promotion of drinking and all of that, right? But curiosity is the key. I think that is the energy of choice, right, in itself, because curiosity is something that, yes, it's a little scary, but it's also a little bit exciting, and it's an explorational kind of approach. I also use a lot of adventure, right, in my work, because adventure is that curiosity, what is going to happen. And so when we leave, sometimes, like in the same metaphor with the radio stations, right, you've been playing, I don't know, rock music or whatever, salsa music all your life. And so for you, that is the reality. And that's why people have that reaction that everybody is drinking. When you switch the radio station, what happens? Two things can happen. One, those people who stayed in salsa radio station stay there, and you go somewhere else and you completely disconnect.
And at that point, you're no longer hearing the same
No, you're
the
listening
same
to another type of
messages
music,
that are
right?
that are right.
Yeah. Or those people who were with you, they also change and they become different. Unfortunately, that happens not as often. So,
True. But then there's also, when you change a station, when it's not digital, and even when it is digital, when you change a station, there's that blurry point in between two stations that you have to get through.
yes.
That is where so many people are right now, as we continue to evolve our minds and as a human species. Can you talk a little bit about that space?
Absolutely. And, I will tell you that none of us are, everybody's going through those blurry stages, and actually on a regular basis, right? Because anytime we are expanding people, and every time you get familiar and you're like, okay, I settled in this space, something else happens, because this is the time for you to go to another vibration, to another level, to another expansion. And imagine if you are contained in this small box and you need to go bigger, something needs to break, right? So this is an uncomfortable period, which our society doesn't train us to. Nobody tells us how to deal with discomfort and just sometimes sit with that. You know what I mean? We gotta fix it. We gotta fix it. That's why we need to have a drug. We need to have a drink. We need to have sex. We need to go shopping. We need to do something that is outside of ourselves, because we cannot. We actually had, there were some experiments, I cannot quote exactly, but we cannot sit in discomfort more than 3 minutes in our brain. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So, but we are not taught. So there is really not, I cannot blame any of us for that, because from the early childhood, we need to fix things. And in different cultures, especially in American culture, showing discomfort or weakness or sadness or whatever, any negative emotion, which is a part of life, it's almost like it's not really accepted, right? If I ask you, Martin, how are you doing? What will be your answer?
I'm good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ask that in Russia. You're going to have a 30-minute conversation how bad it went, you know?
Right.
So there are also cultural transactional interactions. And that's, energetic, cultural, all of that is, I think it's related to that. And that word curiosity, I really love, because if you approach that moment with curiosity, that is already your ticket for success.
Yeah. I will have, by the time this releases, I will have recently released an episode about pacifiers. And pacifiers are those things that we turn to when we're uncomfortable, because we don't want to be uncomfortable. We want to soothe ourselves through that discomfort. And all we're really doing is like biding our time, right? We're just waiting. We're not doing any of that work. But when we can like be uncomfortable and just be curious, even for like 30 seconds. Like that's a huge shift energetically. How does the choice to be curious, what sort of energy shifts are happening just from the initial decision to or choice to be curious?
Well, this is a really good question, because there is this vibrational scale of emotions, right? You're probably familiar with, and we can actually measure the emotions that are predominant in us, right? Of course, we're changing emotions all the time, but if you are supposedly playing that radio station of shame or hate or anger, you are broadcasting certain type of frequency, right? So shame, for example, calibrates at 20 megahertz, while love, joy, peace at 500. So you can imagine we want the life at the love, joy, peace level. That's our dream. But we are sitting in shame. So anytime you have that curiosity opens up to other dimensions, to higher vibrations, right? To vibration of maybe bravery, of vibration of pride, even, sometimes a vibration of anger, which is much higher than shame. Shame is just, that's it, So I think that every time you bring that into your life, you're already expanding, you're elevating yourself. And when you're higher in vibration, it's easier to start seeing the light, right? Because the vibration of the light is the highest. Then our body becomes too heavy and we just go somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
So, right. So that's why I think that curiosity is a beautiful state. It allows you not to be in denial, like, oh, I'm happy, you're not happy. It's you have to have certain fear. I mean, curiosity implies fear.
Yeah.
Of course there's fear in curiosity. Curiosity implies discomfort. I am going somewhere where I've never been.
Right.
But it also implies other energies, like energies of maybe joy that you're going to receive, right? Energies of love that you've never could tune into before, because there was not even a door opening, right? So it opens that door to other possibilities. I love that word so much.
Yeah. So when we start to experience that fear, when we start to experience that discomfort, and obviously for those of us who are just beginning to start this journey of transformation into curious beings, that for me, it took me years to get comfortable with the idea of curiosity. But it really all started with that little thing. So what can we do energetically to make that? I'm not trying to make it happen faster, because sometimes things just don't, they're going to come in their own time. But how can we accept it in a way that is, I don't know, how can we approach this with more acceptance that it's okay to be uncomfortable? Because we're not used to that. We're not used to the idea that, like, oh no, you're just gonna cry for 3 hours and that's it. Like it's not comfortable, it's not fun, but there's a lot of energy that's kind of shifting. How can we promise somebody, or how can we at least get somebody to think that, like, this is a good thing?
Yes, no, absolutely. I think that, the hardest thing is that in our society, we are only accepting positive emotions as good, right? And we don't give any value to negative emotions at all, which is Nobody comes to our offices when they're happy. So the learning happens when you are actually experiencing discomfort.
Yeah.
You cannot grow through that. You cannot, without that, you cannot become successful. You cannot, all of these promises that society tells us we're going to achieve in an American dream, you cannot have them without the period of discomfort. So I think that sometimes even reading people's biographies, of biographies of some people that are, famous saints, even, and famous entrepreneurs and business people and whoever, and just understanding that they, like you, failed, had addiction issues. Every success story has some really dark times. That's why when I look at somebody who's successful, I always know they are my heroes, because they went through so much more than most of us, right? So first of all, trying to shift that understanding of good and bad, right? And going closer to oneness, which is hard because we grew up like that, right? But you can really start seeing that, and remembering your dark moments, that you went through them and something really good happened, right? So that is the good thing, the first step. The second step, I would say, start doing things that you have control over, right? Sleep. I mean, these are basic things, but that's like, pyramid of Maslow's, the pyramid of needs. When I am going through a transition period, and I just went through, my cat died. I know for somebody it's very funny. For me, it's like my daughter, I cried for 3 months, which is, with all of my spiritual background, I still go through these moments. And I know that doesn't really exist, but it doesn't help me because I'm a human, and it's okay. So I go to the basics. I allow myself to sleep. I become very selfish in the sense that I need to take care of me now, because I cannot take care of anybody else, right? If I am not full. I eat well. I start eating well. I try to exercise. Sometimes it's hard emotionally, but at least
I can see the wheels turning. It's like, I don't want to say that I exercise. I try.
Yeah, I try. But if I can't go exercise, I really make myself go outside and just be in the light. Be outside. There's something about being not constricted in that box, because you're already with the box in your head, so doing the
But
things.
this is also like I just want to kind of interject, because you mentioned exercise, right? And exercise is great, but the amount of energy obviously attached to the word exercise, and what that means, and what that is, like exercise, like, could be anything. Like, it could just be stepping outside, movement, like just being in your body. And I think exercise really is just about being in your body and moving your body. And I don't even necessarily think you have to move in order to exercise.
Yes.
It is really just like, but the energy attached to the word in our culture is as such that it makes us so lost in even being able to freely say it. Because even what happened, like the energetic shift that happened when you say, and I knew you were trying to say exercise, but then had to stop yourself because of the energy associated with that. You had to keep yourself in check, because that's going to create a block, because then you have to walk away from that statement and say, well, I don't actually exercise. I try to exercise. And the energy then that starts to spin within your body can create blocks and can create things that are tangible.
Absolutely. And I'm so happy you brought this up, because my third point was to talk about masculine and feminine energies, which exercise and all of these goal achieving activities, they're very masculine, and our society also promotes us. We grow up thinking that I need to suck it up, right? Pretty much, or I need to push myself, or I need to compete or force. So when you are in the state of transition, I invite you to exercise, pun intended, more feminine energy, because exercise, I pronounced that word because I didn't know how to explain the activities. And then, like you said, it was very difficult to even pronounce, because I was like, no, I don't force myself to exercise, because when I'm already low and down and crying, the last thing I want to do and go and lift some weights, which for me is a force. For somebody might not. You need to understand that each of us. So what I teach a lot, right, is that feminine and masculine energy. Feminine energy is about leaning back and being in joy. So
I say stillness.
Stillness, and also enjoying, having some sort of pleasure out of the activity. So for me, I work out a lot, for example, but I learn certain things I'm not going to ever do. I love dancing, so I love Zumba. For me, when I exercise, doing Zumba, that's not an exercise. It's fun party. For somebody, that's difficult, right? So we need to find, you really need to find, and sometimes it requires actually doing it. Do I like walking in the forest? Maybe for somebody it's boring. Doesn't mean that it needs to be yours. Do I like dancing? Do I like pushing iron? So, you know, sometimes that can be the most peaceful meditation, right? Who said that meditation needs to be sitting and, you know,
that's right.
Home, right? So I believe that at that time especially, and in general, you need to find time during the week, during the day, for that joyful activities and not feel shame about it, you know, because we're promoting masculine energy, and we're also shaming all of the pleasure, you know, joyful, happy moments for ourselves, right? You're not supposed to take time for yourself. So I think that that is very important, you know, finding what is good for you. For me, getting out, even on my balcony, I have a balcony, small balcony, but it looks over the lake. When I look at the lake, I understand if something shift happens, I am no longer in my box. I see how the waves comes in and out, and that's my life. And I have all of these metaphors in my head, and that's my happy zone. Remember in your happy zones when you're happy, writing them down, because in the time of darkness, you can look up at your cheat sheet and remember that you can, you know, shift your energy and choose based on what really works for you. There's no recipe for wonderful.
And it needs to be said that what works for you today might not work for you tomorrow.
True. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You know, one of the things I like to address is that we use things like, let's say we use Zumba, right? We use Zumba and it takes us to another level. And that's great. And we can open up energetically and we can do all these things, and that's wonderful. But there may come a day where Zumba is not the answer anymore. And we start then to possibly utilize Zumba, and we utilize the organization of people that we have around Zumba and stuff as a crutch, because we're afraid to go back into that energetic shift, that transition into something else. And this is what happens with addicts, right? You get into something and you do it just because it once had a solution for you, and now it's starting to shift again. And I just wanted to mention that just because it's really important to understand that who you are today is not always going to be who you are.
Absolutely, Martin. And that's a very good point. And I wanted to talk about my personal tool of measuring my energy. I just live my life nowadays with one thing. I put my hands right here on my solar plexus. And does it feel squeezed or it feels expanded? When I feel expanded, that is the right thing for me. I do that for my business. I've been criticized that I run my business in a very unprofessional way. I don't have a marketing guru. I don't have this whole thing. It doesn't work with me. But when I feel that I am expanding because I think of an idea, it always somehow works out. I have no idea how, and I have fun doing it. Yeah. As opposed to before, I used to follow all of these rules, and that worked for millions of other entrepreneurs. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it was just squeezing and forcing, and I didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, would always end up spending more money with less results. So that is the same thing with people. I'm sorry, but every project I have, every interview I have, I listen. Does it expand me or does it shrink me? If it shrinks me, I don't do it.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
Absolutely. So, you know what I mean? With
Hmm.
activities, do I want to go to that party? Do I want to go to that event? If my gut tells me it's going to be forceful,
Right.
so that is kind of like the energy that I feel in me. And that's how I use the feminine energy, because the feminine energy is, I'm going to have fun. I'm going to have joy. And that curiosity is a beautiful word, my favorite word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot, like curiosity is really bringing in a childlike sort of quality to what we're approaching. And as adults, we like to pretend we understand what it's like to be adults. So most people are going around playing the role of an adult. And and that gets really energetically kind of confused. So
Training.
I really want to kind of dive in now to what sort of energy are we playing at? Like, and I don't even know how you can start addressing that, but can you speak a little bit to the idea of like what energy are we reproducing when?
Yeah, of course. And I think it's a great metaphor, again, you gave us, that we're playing an adult, not knowing anything about being an adult or being a child, because we need to suppress our child all the time, right?
Right.
Because it's not cool anymore to be, a child at this age or at this status or at this profession, right?
Right.
I have a PhD, and I know that I've been so criticized online because all of my videos are jumping around and having fun, and that is not how a doctor should be acting. So all of this stigma that we have about everything, right? And it's funny because actually our little child, especially traumatized child, is the one that runs most of our life and our responses in life, yet we need to suppress it and play an adult. I think it's that fossilized energy, that this is how I am. And that is the scariest state, right? You know that when you work with clients, well, this is how I am,
Mm.
right? That is the
My biggest frustration is when people say, "Well, it's just human nature." And I'm like, oh God, that shit doesn't exist. I'm sorry. Like, you are human nature and you can do whatever you want. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah, but this is similar. Like, this is how I
hmm.
am, and
Yeah.
this is it. And because you, at some point, fossilized yourself at this state, you grew up, you're an adult, you are a father, you are, I don't know, a businessman with $100,000 income, and
Hmm.
this is, I'm driving this type of cars, I'm watching this type of movies, the
Identity.
whole life is just fossilized, and there is no room for curiosity, there is no room for flexibility, there is no room for messiness. Another
Right.
word I love is messiness. Life is messy,
Yep.
and the messy is the energy of a child.
Mm.
Curiosity is the energy of a child. Playfulness is the energy of the child. And I think that if we combine that with our goals and whatever we have, the masculine energy, right, with the feminine energy of reception and enjoyment and pleasure, that's when we become that adult that combines all of those years that we lived before and still have all of this space for whatever I am gonna wake up and be tomorrow,
Yeah.
because tomorrow I'm gonna be different than today. And that's
That brings up so much about, like, like this questioning of our identity, and then looking at the fact that we have labels for children and adults. Like, if we just called everybody people, we would really be like, oh, this is a person. They have, like, they're 5 years old and they're exploring certain things in their lives. This is a person who's 55 years old and exploring certain things in their life. And if we could get rid of this label of like adult child, because when you say child, immediately energetically we start experiencing what a child is.
yeah.
When we say adult, immediately we start experiencing what an adult is. And we approach the conversation with a preconception in our mind of what that means to us.
Yes, and everybody has a different understanding. So we can never find a consensus here, right? Because every word has a charge for each of us because of our own experiences, right? So
Right.
absolutely. So that's why I think that. But how do you teach that to a person that has lived 30, 40, 50 years with that? That is, I think that looking at yourself, like, sometimes I look in the mirror, I'm like, whoa, there are some kind of wrinkles there already, but I don't feel any different than when I was 10. I remember exactly the same feeling that I had. You know what I mean? So our body might change and shift, right? But the inner, I am sure that anybody, even the most fossilized adults, can connect with that energy of that they remember from 7 years old or 15 years old or 20 years old. And I'm realizing that, and sometimes I forget what age I am. Somebody asks me, what's your age? I'm like, it takes me a second to think. I don't associate myself with the age,
Right.
So, but I think that reminding yourself of those memories, and memories are a beautiful source of energy. You can transport yourself in your mind, right? You don't have to know the art of lucid dreaming. You can just remember something or imagine something, and using that part of our creative brain that can bring you to the situation either in the past that was very dear to you, and just fill your body with that, and from that start your day, or maybe situation that you would like to be and imagine it, right? All of this manifestation, that's how we create it, right? But I think that we are not trained to use our imagination to just you can change your mood, you can change your state of energy just by going somewhere without going anywhere. Like you said, you can exercise without moving. Yeah, you can lay in your bed and imagine yourself dancing, right?
Yeah. And there's like you bring up the idea of memory, and I want to express that there are these, like implicit and explicit memories, right? Like explicit memories are ones that you think of, right? Like the idea that like you can remember what it was like when you were 10. But there are implicit memories, right? Like which you don't really think of, but just are there. Are they running in the background? And that is where a lot of our energy is stored, and a lot of the energy that drives our decision to stay where we are or to be curious, right? Like all of those things are coming from our implicit memory, where we can we're being driven by old trauma and old things like that. But curiosity can start just asking ourselves, well, why are we making this decision? And realize that maybe it's an implicit memory that's causing us to do that. We can then utilize explicit memory. We can actually think about how we can change that, which then puts us in the space of altering our energy.
Absolutely. And sometimes that state of curiosity might not be so exciting because, like these 3 months that I've gone through, I will share with you. I would wake up and I would just tell myself, I don't feel good, but I want to ask, whatever you ask, whatever is bigger than this beautiful meat suit that we have, right? Something, whatever you believe, I don't want to even define it.
Yeah.
Please show me what I need to learn from this. Please show me what is the bigger thing for me. And that I know, it's a famous kind of switch, but our audience might not know about it. That preposition from 2 to 4, that's a magic. Why is it happening to me is the victim. Why is it happening for me? That creates space for curiosity, right? That has space for curiosity and readiness to hear and listen during the day, during this time. What are the messages that are coming to me? Because through these 3 months of my difficult grief, I came up with the most amazing creative ideas.
Yeah.
And I would have never gone there had I not gone through that difficult, dark time.
It's interesting, and I think people miss this a lot, is that everything you experience is coming from everything that you have experienced, because everything you have experienced is what made you you. And now you're bringing everything in through that filter. And so everything that you experience, the way you experience it, it's not a fact. Like, yes, there's a fact that your cat died, but how you experience that is you, and is your lesson, and is your work.
Yes, and you know it's interesting because many years ago, 7 years ago, I had a difficult time, really difficult time. I lost my home, I lost my husband, and I was homeless. And I remember in the yoga studio on the mat, that was my bed. My friend who owned the studio allowed me to sleep there on the floor. And I showered in the gym, and I worked in Whole Foods. And I remember I was laying one day on the floor crying, thinking that I am just, everything's happening to me, kind of state. And I was watching my Russian movies on my cell phone at night because to distract myself. And suddenly, you know how on YouTube there are videos on the side, and I was asking God, universe, whatever, that what kind of lesson is there and what I should do now. And there was a video of an energy machine that I didn't even know existed at that time, that measures human biofield. And I clicked on that, and it was a Russian video. And it was made from, the scientists created that. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was such a perfect combination of what I was. I loved the energy field, but I also loved the research. And I clicked on it. I called them because it was night here, early morning there. They answered, and I bought that machine. And from there, my new business started. Mm-hmm. So, that state of darkness, had I not been upset, I wouldn't be online at 2:00 in the morning watching Russian movies and crying about everything. And it would not have I wouldn't even have the idea, because sometimes we want to solve situation with our brain, with our mind, but our mind gives us answers that it already knows. So if you want to go beyond what you want, you got to stay curious and ask questions and listen.
That's right. And
that is the most amazing shift that happened in my life, because it brought me to my life purpose.
Wow. Dr. Kostina, what a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. And I want to finish with one thing, is that even if you suffered and were in misery for 30 years, it doesn't have to take 30 more years to unsuffer. Energy shifts in a matter of seconds, and you can shift it yourself, even just by elevating it, even by imagining, or by feeling, or by doing something. Your energy shifts higher, and once it's higher, you can go as much high in a spiral as you go down. Mm-hmm. It's as kind of pulling you, right? Because probably in your life, whenever you start loving yourself and doing good things for yourself that make you feel amazing and expanding, you become more excited about that, and you want to do more and more and more and more. So the energy can shift very quickly. It doesn't have to take years.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. When I work with people, it's always on a very short basis. I want you to get out and live your life. I don't want you set into a 10-year plan where you have to see me every fucking week. Like, that's bad energy.
Exactly. I love this, Martin. And I always say I'd rather grow with my client and learn new things that they might need at different steps in their life, or I know that there's abundance of other people that need to come, but I don't need you here for a long time. I want you to come in and then go and have the tools to
live your life,
expanding your own life.
That's Absolutely. Right. That's right.
Yes.
Oh, Dr. Kostina,
so
thank
nice
you
to have this wonderful conversation with you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I don't know if there's anything more important than always being aware of where you can take a step towards growth and remembering that everything will change. Those are two very important things that I think we really miss. Energy is one of those things in life that is abstract. Trying to define it or defend it will always leave you wanting. But when you feel it and you allow yourself to be guided by it, no matter what it may cause you to question in your life, then you are on your own personal path. Now, Even if that energy guides you to follow someone else's path for a time, whether that be some program, religion, philosophy, or anything else, you owe it to yourself to listen to your energy. Be curious and take the next most obvious step for you right now. I want to thank Dr. Kostina for her time and insight. If you're in Chicago, you can find her at Ravenous Life Healing Center. Otherwise, check out the link in the description of this episode to learn more about her work. Please rate and review this podcast and/or leave comments for this episode to help me better create helpful content. Support this show at anchor.fm or support me and my work at Patreon, where you will get access to unedited content as well as writings and access to supporter group portrait sessions with me. I host workshops regularly, which are both open to the public and are a source of continuing education units for professionals. I also take a limited number of one-on-one clients every month, so when you're ready to work together through my workshops or individually, contact me through martinjohn.com. I also accept financial support through Venmo at martinjohn_Garcia, so if you benefit from this content, please consider supporting my efforts. Thank you for listening to the Recover Yourself podcast, and until next time, keep recovering yourself.